O'Reilly here. Welcome to the No Spin News, Monday, January 31st, 2022. Stand up for your country. Subverting traditional America is the subject of this evening's Talking Points memo. Aren't you glad I brought this back last week? Okay, so there is a column written by Victor Davis Hanson. You can read it on realclearpolitics.com. entitled Joe Biden and the Uses of Nihilism. Nihilism, wow, very philosophical. Mr. Hanson, who is a college instructor in Central California, is the best traditional/conservative columnist. He is the most insightful. He is a better columnist than me. And I will freely admit that. The guy is brilliant. And he really nails very important things that you should know about with facts. He's a fact-driven columnist, as this broadcast is a fact-driven broadcast, not an opinion forum. Anyway, the three main areas that Mr. Hanson is worried about in the destruction of traditional America by progressives are these: the elections, law enforcement/border, and education. All right. Now, I wrote a column yesterday, posted on BillO'Reilly.com, about the progressive movement hurting the children, hurting school kids. I hope you all read it. Pretty good column, I have to say. Hanson would like it. The elections are obviously paramount. Now, the New York Times, of all people, have investigated dark money. All right, that is money that nobody knows about going in to subvert the election process. Now, the New York Times is doing this, in my opinion, because it is just bleeding as far as its objectivity is concerned. So it took this on. According to that newspaper, more than $2 billion was spent by shadowy groups in 2020 on the progressive liberal side to influence the vote. $2 billion. Whereas right-wing Republican groups spent less than $1 billion. Now, we've gone over this. The Mark Zuckerberg, $430 million into various counties so people could be hired to go in and coach people who have mail-in ballots. We went through it. It's on the record. It's not disputed. There's not two sides to the story. It happened. That's not dark money because Zuckerberg donated it to two nonprofit liberal organizations who had to proclaim the donations to the IRS. So we saw it. The dark money is when you give money, big money, to people and they don't know where it came from. Okay, so George Soros, it has just been learned, is donating $125 million for the midterm elections coming in November. Soros is giving the money to Democracy PAC, PAC, which is run by his son. Okay? And the money then is going to be distributed to counties around the USA to try to get people to vote progressive. Again, this isn't dark money because we know about it. We know about it. But you can see the heavy, heavy duty money from the left going into trying to tilt the election their way. I think that's fair. That's an assessment. That's where it's going, and there's a lot of it. Now, Republicans, as I said, are doing the same thing to a lesser extent. None of this should be happening. There should be clear guidelines in every state as to what you can and can't do. Remember, if you go to the poll in person and vote, there cannot be electioneering. That's a felony. But if you get a mail-in ballot, there are no restrictions. Someone can come into your home, fill the ballot out, take the ballot and deliver it to the voting precinct. That should not happen. There are incapacitated people, there are befuddled people, and this is who is being targeted by the mail-in situation. I don't oppose mail-in ballots, but you've got to have restrictions, the same template that you have for in-person voting. That's not unreasonable, that's fair. That's what should be happening. Okay, so that's the elections. Law enforcement. Last week alone, 10 police officers in the United States were shot. 2 dead. Last week. We'll get to the specifics of that. In every major city in this country run by progressives, violent crime is out of control. Why? Because the laws are not being enforced. Same thing on the border. More than 2 million migrant confrontations with Border Patrol last fiscal year. More than 2 million. I think that's 10 times what there was in Trump's last year. Open borders still there. Very little border enforcement. In fact, the Border Patrol is mutinying down there. You might have seen that video. There's a mutiny underway because not only are they letting in children, they're letting in violent criminals, and then they're secretly flying those people. When I say they, the Biden administration, secretly flying them to cities all across the country in the middle of the night. Is this the kind of nation you want? Progressives want this. And then finally, there's the education, no grades, it's the same thing. It mirrors law enforcement. Very little constraints on criminals. Let them out, no bail. Very little demands on high school students, middle school students. No grades, knock them out. And that's what I write about in my column. That is doing a disservice to the deprived children, the children with bad parents. Okay? They're not going to learn much and they're not going to be able to compete. So all of this is in the progressive philosophy. They want this kind of a society, and they also want socialism. Okay, they want to do away with capitalism and all of that. So you know all that. Now, the key question that Victor Davis Hanson deals with is, why is President Biden promoting this? And he is, by not taking a hard stand against the open border, which is his fault, directly. He's the one that threw out the Remain in Mexico policy that federal judge's order reinstated. He's the one that says nothing about violent crime. All right? He's the guy. So Hanson thinks he's impaired. All right? Now, Hanson doesn't know this is an opinion based upon Biden's performance. And there's no question that Biden is governing to the far left. There's no question at all. That's not debatable. That's what he's doing. Does he know what he's doing? Hanson says probably not. And there's a bunch of other columns comparing Biden to Woodrow Wilson in 1918 when Wilson got the Spanish flu. He was incapacitated. He didn't know what he was doing, but it was covered up. American people didn't know it. Okay? So Biden, we all know. We can see him. And Hanson says he's in cognitive decline. I agree with that to some extent, but I could be wrong. But I'll tell you who is not in cognitive decline, and that's Jill Biden, the president's top advisor, as we laid out last week. She knows what this is all about. She knows how the extreme progressives have control of the Democratic agenda. She knows. And Joe Biden is almost totally dependent upon her. Okay, so that is the memo. Now, today, President Biden had 2 things on the schedule. He hosted a National Governors Association meeting. There were some Republican governors in there, and I'm glad to see that. Asa Hutchinson of Arkansas, Charlie Baker of Massachusetts, named 2. And then he hosted the emir of the state of Qatar in the Middle East. That's what Joe Biden did today. Okay, the cops. So 2 New York City police officers were killed in an ambush. The guy who did it is dead. 2 officers were shot in St. Louis, both in their 20s. They survived. 3 officers shot in Houston, Harris County, Texas. They survived. 2 officers shot in Milwaukee. They survived. 1 Kentucky state trooper shot. He's in stable condition. What are all of these outside of Kentucky have in common? They are run by progressive mayors and city councils who do not want to enforce the law. So just last week, in a 7-day period, 2 dead cops, 8 wounded cops in America. Now, why? Because when criminals are not held accountable for committing crimes, there will be more crimes committed. That's it. They become emboldened. You can see it in San Francisco, in LA, in New York, in Chicago. They swagger around armed with guns. And the DA in New York City says, even if you have a gun in the commission of a robbery, we're not going to charge you with a felony. That's insane. That's what's happening. Are you looking for your next investment? Bill O'Reilly here. There are 8 reasons to look at the NRIA Real Estate Development Fund. Stable monthly cash flow payouts with double-digit targeted bonus returns. They strategically develop in lower risk, high demand neighborhoods. Prime new construction is short on supply and high on demand. Diversification is safety from stock market risk. They have a short and long-term strategy for returns today and down the road. Specifically designed pandemic-hardened buildings. They are 15-year industry leaders with a proven track record. So if you've been sitting on the sidelines or want to diversify, please start your due diligence at nria.net or call 800-800-1414. That's easy, 800-800-1414.
An offer of securities is only made by the NRIA Private Placement Memorandum. Read it first. Past performance does not guarantee future results. NRIA is a real estate development firm. Learn more at nria.net.
So I wanted to find a progressive person to explain all of this to me from that point of view. We cast a net and we came up with a guy you may remember. His name is Ellis Hennigan. He lives in New York City in Tribeca, a very swell progressive neighborhood. Okay? He is a columnist for Dow Jones Market Watch, and he writes books as well. Now, Ellis does not call himself, put Ellis up there, get him in here. Ellis doesn't call himself a progressive because he doesn't want to be pigeonholed in there. And I understand, I don't call myself a conservative.
Good.
We'll get to you, Ellis. I hold conservative beliefs, but I'm not a doctrinaire conservative. If there is a problem-solving activity on the liberal side, I will embrace it. Okay. So Ellis says he has progressive beliefs, but he isn't a progressive. I just want to get that up top. So I have a checklist here, Ellis. Rather than, bloviate and BS, we don't do that here on the No Spin News. I'm going to ask you a series of things that progressives want and how you feel about them. Fair? Mm-hmm. Ready?
Sure. Bring it on.
Okay. Voter ID. Should it be required?
It's unnecessary. No, we're doing fine without it.
I don't know who we is, but half the country has no confidence in the election at all. Half.
Well, there's no evidence.
Voter ID is simply proving who you are before you cast a ballot. Now, in New York City, where you live, City Council said, hey, foreign people can vote in the local elections. That's going to be knocked out as unconstitutional. But why is it wrong for the government to compel people to show an ID? Why?
Because it's not necessary. There is no evidence of widespread voter fraud in America that would have any impact on any serious election, including the one that we've been debating for the last year and change. And it has the additional impact, as you know, the more ID, the more proof, the more grilling questions you engage in at the polling place, you make it harder for people to vote. So on balance, we're better off with the system the way we have it now.
Okay, so you say that providing an identification is a burden for some people. Is that what you're saying?
Well, it depends on how you handle it, obviously, but what kind of ID, how far you push it, what do you do when someone has one kind of ID and not another? It's a problem.
States control the votes, a state-issued ID. Could be a driver's license, could be a social security number, could be anything like that. You see, you open the door to fraud, and you say, not needed, but I say, and I'm right, that half the country doesn't have, at least, has no confidence in our electoral system. None. Now, imposing an ID might restore confidence, right?
Well, I'm sticking with the facts. I can't adjust to what people's opinions are. I'm telling you.
Ellis Hennigan wants no ID at all. I assume you don't want any ID to buy alcohol and marijuana, right? No ID for that?
You cannot show me evidence of widespread voting fraud that would affect the elections.
No, Ellis, stay on my question.
Until you can do
alcohol,
that,
pot, no ID necessary?
For what, I'm sorry?
Alcohol and pot to buy it.
Yeah,
no ID?
No, I'd like ID for that. I think that's a problem.
You would?
A lot of kids.
ID for booze and pot, but not ID for the most important part of being a citizen, casting a ballot. Okay, just want to get you on a record. Okay, are you concerned about Zuckerberg and Soros pumping hundreds of millions of dollars into the election to try to persuade people, sometimes one-on-one with home visits, all right, to vote a certain way? Does that concern you?
Absolutely. I'm so happy, by the way, that you joined me in election reform of that sort. Absolutely. It's a big problem.
All right. So you agree with me that the same standard of voting for the polling place should be in mail-in ballots?
Well, I'm not sure how you would do that exactly. For instance, we prohibit electioneering at the polls. I don't know that you could really stop someone talking at the kitchen table about who they're going to vote for.
I think you could charge them with a felony if they entered a home and try to convince people to vote a certain way. I think that could happen. You'd have to get the testimony of the voter. But if the voter testified, then you charge a person with a felony.
Yeah, I'm not sure you really want to be in the business of telling people who they can have at their kitchen table. But
I do. No, I do. I want anybody who goes into a private home or a nursing home or a facility that tries to convince someone with a mail-in ballot to vote a certain way, I want them charged.
Yeah.
Just so you know.
Okay. No, and I don't agree with that. I think I should have the right to invite anyone into my home.
Inviting. Okay. Yeah. No bail laws, all right? You're in New York City. You know the difference between Giuliani and Bloomberg administrations, and now the de Blasio. We'll see what happens with the new mayor. No bail law. You like it?
No, I'm not for no bail. I'm for sensible bail. I think under the old system,
should judges have the power to put sensible bail on people?
Yes.
Okay. So that means we'd have to throw that insane no bail law out in New York. How about no grades in high school? As I sent you my column. Did you read my column?
Yeah, I liked your column. It was interesting. It brought me back to Holy Name of Jesus and Sister Marcella. I was thinking about. I gotta say, I think it really has more to do, honestly, with good teachers than the question of whether there's a letter grade or an evaluation or some other way that we judge students. I'm not wedded to the idea of A, B, C, D, E, F, whatever the grades are. But somehow or another, you got to say, hey, this kid is ready to move on to the next grade. But I'm open-minded about how you do that.
Open-minded. All right. Open-minded is always good. Open borders, talking about open, Biden administration obviously is enforcing border law, and the proof of that is the Border Patrol is in mutiny. So do you think Biden has screwed up the border?
I think the border is screwed up. I don't think any one of our last dozen presidents has had a grip on it. We don't have control of our immigration system. I think a lot of it, frankly, is kind of hopeless. I think that as long as we have economic demand.
Trump cut it down pretty substantially, all right? And then Biden knocked that out. And then we have millions of people illegally crossing. Would you criticize Biden for the knocking out of the Remain in Mexico policy?
Honestly, I would say that most of those rises and falls, which happened during Obama, went up and down during Trump, I think is the more balanced way. I think most of that is beyond the reach of the president. I think that as long as our economy has a demand for people, those people will find their way in here. I think that's most likely to happen.
You're dodging. So
No,
under
I'm saying
Trump,
exactly the truth.
in the last year of the Trump administration, the amount of migrants entering the USA was a fraction of what it is now. A fraction.
Yeah.
Would you not hold Joe Biden accountable for that mass wave of humanity coming in here, flying people in the middle of the night on taxpayer expense so no one knows, to different parts of the country? Do you like that policy? You think that's good?
This is what I think. I think that it would be much better if we had an ordered and legal immigration policy. I think that all recent presidents have failed to do that. And until both our parties are able to come together and do some comprehensive immigration reform,
right.
I think
you're
it's
not going to
hopeless.
commit. You're not going to criticize Biden on the open border thing. You're not going to do
I'll
that.
criticize them all. I think all presidents have failed. You would
Biden
agree with
has
that,
been
right?
The absolute worst in American history on the border, and there's no question of it. Okay, what about Biden's mental capacity, just as an American now? You're not a pundit anymore. You're sitting there, you're watching a 2-hour press conference. You see him and the way he conducts himself. You worried about him?
You know, it's interesting. I'm not really very worried about him. I think that it is great politically for Biden for people to underestimate his mental capacity. In the same way they did in the campaign. Remember all that basement Joe, he can't do anything. And then he went and beat the other guy.
Okay, he beat him because Trump beat himself. That's why he won. But the polling now is hovering around 40% job approval.
Yes,
I don't think that's a good thing for Joe Biden.
No.
I mean, do you?
No, I think, in fact, it's almost where Trump's numbers were. They're almost exactly parallel. I think we're at a point, honestly, Bill, that we hate whoever our president is.
So if the election were held tomorrow and Joe Biden ran against an unnamed Republican, you would vote again for Joe Biden, based upon his performance up to now?
Most likely, yeah.
Okay, I'm glad you're honest. That's why we brought you in, because people write me all the time, how can anybody support Joe Biden with all of the inflation, all of the chaos, the Afghanistan thing? I mean, you didn't think Afghanistan he handled well, did you?
No, that was kind of a mess. We could have gotten out better than that.
All right. So, but you'd still vote for him again, 4 more years. One more question.
Show me who he's running against, but probably, yeah.
All right. I mean, look, if he ran against Big Pappy, David Ortiz, I'd vote for Big Pappy. At least you have somebody in there who could put a sentence together. But anyway, do you believe that Biden and the Democrats are going to get whacked in the November election, despite all the dark money?
Most likely.
Okay. Ellis
I mean,
Hennigan,
listen,
everyone.
the out party almost always loses in the midterms. Right?
Yeah. But this is going to be historic proportions, I think, at this point.
We'll see.
So, Ellis, look, we'll talk again. We appreciate it. If there's anything on your mind that, you're riled up about, let us know. We'll throw you on. At least Ellis is honest. That's all I ask of my loyal opposition. You have homeowners insurance for a good reason, because without it, fire, flood, burglary could destroy you financially. But there is another major crime your policy does not cover. It is called home title fraud. The FBI calls title fraud one of the fastest growing crimes, which is why you need Home Title Lock. Title fraud happens when a criminal forges your signature on documents stating you sold your home to him. Then he takes out loans against your home and leaves you with the payments. You will spend a fortune in legal fees just to prove you didn't commit fraud. Home Title Lock puts a barrier around your home's title. The instant they detect anyone, from a cyber thief to a renter to a relative trying to forge their way onto your home's title, they help shut it down. Please go to HomeTitleLock.com, register your address to see if you are already a victim, and enter radio for your 60-day money-back guarantee. That's code radio at HomeTitleLock.com. All right, final thought of the day. Where are the kneelers? Where are they? Colin Kaepernick, where are you? Have you seen any kneelers? Huh? Big playoff games? I haven't seen any. Great renditions of the national anthem. I haven't seen anybody kneeling. What happened? Were all the social problems solved? Here's what happened. The National Football League took a big economic hit when that kneeling started. And they said to the players' union, we'll make you a deal. We'll allow you to put slogans on your helmets, the players, that say, end racism, stop hate, we're all in this together, whatever it may be. They can put it on the back of their helmet. In return, nobody kneels. Secret deal. Not reported. That's what happened. So even the most radical players aren't kneeling. And not everybody has a slogan. Some teams have it, some teams don't. But that's what happened. Now, you would think that the sporting press would notice what happened to all the kneelers. What? Big money was lost by the NFL because of all of that radical stuff. So they clamped it down because above all else in the NFL, money rules. It's the same thing in the media, the news media, the entertainment media. All that matters is money. Okay? And that is corrupting. There's no doubt about it. Now, do I mind the helmet thing? No. I don't think it's appropriate. I think the helmet is the helmet. If I were a player, I wouldn't put a slogan on there. What if you put a slogan that says, re-elect Trump? Is that okay? No, that wouldn't be okay. You see? Or re-elect Biden. They might let you get away with re-elect Biden, but they'd never let you put re-elect Trump on your helmet. So this is all a bunch of hypocrisy. It's a bunch of hooey. But Roger Goodell, who runs the NFL, he's answerable to all the owners. The owners were taking a big financial hit. They said, you better solve this, Roger. And Roger did. He and the union got together, informally, I'm sure, no paper. We'll let you do this, but everybody stands. And now, everybody's standing. And in the Super Bowl, we congratulate the Rams and the Bengals, particularly the Bengals, to go from 4 wins to the Super Bowl in 1 year. Wow. I mean, that's a pretty great accomplishment. But anyway, you're not going to see any kneeling at the Super Bowl. Thank you for watching this evening. We'll see you tomorrow. AMAC, the Association of Mature American Citizens, is the leading conservative advocacy and benefits organization in America. I am an AMAC member, and you should be too. AMAC gives you access to exclusive benefits, insightful takes on today's news, and a magazine full of uncensored content that you will not find anywhere else. Most importantly, AMAC is working tirelessly to preserve the freedoms enshrined and secured by our Constitution. AMAC has become one of the most impactful organizations in America because more than just talk, AMAC gets things done. They are pushing back against the efforts to defund our police, weaken the borders, and replace your freedom with government control. But they need your help. Stand with me and more than 2 million patriots and join AMAC today at amac.us. That's AMAC.us. amac.us, and tell them O'Reilly sent you.
Bill O'Reilly is back on TV and only on The First. No Spin News, every weeknight at 8 p.m. Eastern, only on The First.